Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord. Welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Today we have 3 cards we need to talk about. A new Produce SSR for Mamimi, a Produce SR for Toru, and Support SR for Kaho. Keep in mind that Mamimi and Toru are both permanent, and their banner doesn't feature any sort of benefit outside of paid-only steps, so you can't even spark for Mamimi while she's here. As such, I don't think the banner is super worth it if you're trying to be, let's say, reasonable with your gems. But if you like Mamimi and Toru, then it's worth pulling at least a couple times, I think. Also, I was planning on getting this video out a couple days ago, but unfortunately, scheduling was not quite as fortunate as it could have been. But here we are. Let's go ahead and get into the video now. Starting things off, we have Mamimi. It's really been 10 months since we last got to talk about a Mamimi P-SSR. Let's just think about that for a little bit. They really do stagger out these releases. Mamimi 6 heralds both the beginning of Antika 6, but also the return of the deceptive and enfeebling playstyle of Antika. Mamimi's appeals can lower how much damage judges take, while also applying poison to all rivals in the meanwhile. Assuming you do back-to-back appeals, that's 45% poison in a short amount of time, which is pretty devastating depending on the situation. Being dance and vocal also helps place this Mamimi in teams that could use her the most, and doesn't invalidate Mamimi 4 for any future visual support Antika might receive. The biggest bummer is one of her skill slots is wasted on plus 100 mental, which hasn't worked out for any of the Antika cards that also have received this treatment. The link appeals are also pretty boring, but they really don't know what to do with 5-member link appeals anyway, so not really too much to expect. She's a good card overall for vocal dance. Her roles are debuffer, she can inflict poison, she has interest down, and she kind of is a revenge unit. I moderately recommend pulling for her. She's fine, but the banner's kinda rough, and she is a permanent card, so you may find her in the future. Mamimi's initial skill is a Dance 3.0 appeal that reduces the judge's interest by 10% for 2 turns. Keep in mind this is single target interest down, not AoE. This also applies a 5% poison to all rivals for 3 turns, and links into a Dance 3.0. At max, she unlocks a Vocal 4.0 appeal that reduces the judge's interest by 10% for 2 turns, and applies a 10% poison to rivals for 3 turns. This links into a Vocal 3.0 appeal. Mamimi's 1-star passive is a Vocal Dance 25% up that requires the turn count to be 4 or earlier. This has a 20% chance to activate 2 times per run. At 2 stars, she unlocks a couple things. First is her gold passive, a Vocal Dance 60% up that requires your mental to be 49% or lower, has a 20% chance to activate twice. She also unlocks a plus 50 dance and plus 100 mental uncap. At 3 stars, she gains a Vocal Dance plus 100 uncap, and at 4 stars, a Vocal plus 150 uncap. Her memory appeal, once maxed out, is a maximum Vocal 3.0 appeal that scales based on how low your mental is, and links into a Vocal Dance 1.5 appeal. As for the support recommendations, Antika have a fairly healthy balance of dance supports, and Vocal Kogane helps in general if you're trying to strike a balance. Illumine continue to have good supports for vocal or dance depending, so find a balance that fits your playstyle. The alternative supports focus on other forms of utility for vocal and dance. Utilizing the Sakuya SR support will definitely assist if you want a more defensive approach, while Asahi supports will help in generating SP if you lack limited Antika supports. For the team recommendation, this is going to look incredibly familiar if you watch the Kiriko 5 review, which I'll link above. In this case, however, we can actually use Sakuya 3 and Mamimi 6 together to apply a heavy amount of melancholy for team disruption. Your choice of Kogane, again, is your choice, though I feel Kogane 5 might be slightly better thanks to modernity. If all else fails, not equal Yuika, aka Yuika 3, will provide damage if you build around her as well, so there's a couple different plans of attack that this team can take, which is nice and appreciated. Mamimi as a center earns a B+. So I think Mamimi's memory appeal is fine, but sorta strange. It's a revenge type appeal at heart, which would imply you want to run her vocal, while also using enough cards to lower your mental. Thing is, your poison doesn't affect your health, only rivals, so you would need some additional support, and it only really feels tacked on for Antika purposes, rather than being an integral part of the kit. Maybe if you do a crit mental build, it's a lot more reasonable, but at that point you might as well just run not equal, and instead of focus on vocal, you go to dance. So, nah, it could be fine, I guess. As a unit, she gets anywhere from a B+ to an A-. I feel there's a bit of potential with Mamimi 6 for sure. They could double down on the melancholy part of her build later, leading to aggressive poison distribution, which could be scary in the right setup. There's already signs of it with Sakuya 3, so maybe we'll see something with, I don't know, Kogane 6 or Yuika 6, who knows. The interest down is more of a small tack-on than a huge point to her card, so it makes her a little less impactful, I think, for vocal Antika, which is why I feel dance is maybe a little more useful for her, but who knows. Her passives are fine. She just needs maybe one more push, one more kind of card to really make her feel dangerous, so we'll have to keep an eye out. Next we have Toru. Our Toru content resumes with a new gacha produced SR, which might as well be a unicorn as far as shiny is concerned. She's a dance and vocal unit who prioritizes attention up, built to help proc evasion and potential buff stacking from a card like Madoka 2. If you ignore that point, she feels like a fairly old Hokura card, just without the usual defense down debuff attached as a detriment. Truth be told, the options this Toru opens up are incredibly limited and probably not worth the effort. She doesn't mesh with Koito 1, and marginally works with Hinana 1 or Hinana 2. Madoka 2 is probably the most clear-cut card here, but without Toru 2, it feels a lot less functional and possibly even a lot less practical. I think this is another situation where you're here for the outfit and commu, less for the practicality, and that's perfectly okay. Her roles are attention up and buffer, and I don't really recommend pulling for this Toru. She is a permanent and an SR, so tickets or miscellaneous pulls will probably find her eventually, so don't worry too hard about it. Toru's initial skill is a Dance 2.5 appeal that raises your attention by 30% for 3 turns, and links into a Dance 2.0. At max, she gets a Vocal 3.0 appeal that raises your attention by 60% for 3 turns, and links into a Vocal 2.0. Her 1-star passive is a Dance 15% up that requires your mental to be 75% or higher. This has a 40% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a Vocal 30% up that requires the turn count to be 3 or earlier. This also has a 40% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a plus 100 to Vocal, and her memory appeal once maxed out is a Vocal Dance 40% buff until you are damaged that links into a Dance 2.0. For the support recommendations, stacking up Vocal on Toru is probably the best bet, as Nocchill lack any meaningful dance supports to make the most of things. Naturally, including any Vocal Madoka supports, aside from her event card, in the alternative recommendation. For the alternatives, SP and Vocal as always. Meguru is a fine enough option alongside Mono should you choose to run her, while Choco represents any of the tri-stat Hokura cards if that's your fancy. Fuyuko works well with Mei, and Amana is here, of course, for the stamina assistance and SP generation. For team recommendations, we've just got one. Since Dance Nocchill practically doesn't exist, Vocal Nocchill is your best bet. Rinzai 4 is another option as a support if you don't use Rinzai 1, or you can drop an Asahi 4 or Mei 3, whichever works for you. Toru as a center earns a seat. Toru is kinda whatever, to be honest, but I don't feel that's too surprising considering she's a gacha SR. We're very far removed from the days of SR1 Sakuya being one of the top center contenders. Regardless, Toru is pretty middling in that her buff is fine, but nothing special, and her attention up really makes keeping this buff more trouble than it's worth. The point of her type of buff on the memory appeal is that you want to be avoiding attacks, and unfortunately raising your attention kinda does the opposite. So there's a lot of support this card needs just to function as I think they want you to, and it's almost way too much effort for just an SR. As a unit, she gets a C-. I guess all I can really say about this Toru card is that she's kinda boring? She's not really doing anything particularly interesting by design, as she feels like a 2018 card repackaged for 2021 without any real positive spin on it. You can certainly do worse for gacha SRs, but Toru finds herself modeled after Hokura without much of a reliable home to turn to. Lastly, we have our event card, Kaho. Our event support SR this update is Kaho's 4th support SR overall. Acting as sort of a midway point between Gekon Climax Natsuha and Kaho's first produced SSR, who brings radio show mastery while having aggressive amounts of attention up with damage cut to compensate. I think Snow Day Kaho is still overall better, but it's a fun card to consider at the very least. Her support skills are Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, and Stamina support, and her unique support skill is Radio Mastery Vocal, reaching +5 at level 65. Her TFD idea is Vocal, her Insight Token for Grad is Vocal, and her proficiency in Landing Point is Vocal. Kaho's 1-star passive is a Vocal 12% up that requires you to be in the Vocal position. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 2-star passive is a vocal 30% up and attention 30% up as long as your star count is 3 or higher. This has a 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a plus 50 to vocal, and her 4-star appeal is a vocal 2.5 that raises your attention by 100% for 2 turns and applies a mental damage cut of 50% for 2 turns. Her event passive is an 8% vocal buff that requires Kaho on your team, and it has a 30% chance to activate twice. Kaho earns a C-. I hate to say it, but Kaho's SR is not all that great. The 100% attention and 50% damage cut has some potential uses in Collabo Fest to help save someone for a turn, which I think is probably the best case use of this type of appeal. The passives are nothing special as per usual, and the radio mastery only really complements Gekkan Climax Natsuha. The art and the story is good at least, so definitely pick up the card if you're curious about some fun with Hokuro. You might as well farm for Kaho while she's here. And that will do it for the video today. Thank you so much as always for watching. Next time we'll be talking about whatever banner comes next. Let's look forward to it together. I've been Sho, thanks for watching, have a wonderful rest of your day.